Beanie-man here, and welcome to another episode of Super Beanie-man Gaming Reviews. In today's episode, I'm going to be looking at ERCIA on PS4, which is a live-action, narrative-driven game. As usual with my reviews, I'm going to be looking at the good and the bad to weigh up which is best, and hopefully give you a decent idea of what the game's like and whether you'll want to play it at the end of the review. I would compare it to other FMV sort of games like The Bunker or Late Shift, which you can find on PS4, and maybe even older titles like Mad Dog McCree and Dragon's Lair, in terms of you get like quick time prompts come up that you have to press to advance the story forward. And it's also kind of like the Telltale, Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, Borderlands, Batman, all of those games. It's kind of like that as well. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty, and I'll tell you what I liked and what I disliked, the good and the bad of ERCIA on PS4.
Super beanie-man. Super beanie-man gaming. All kinds of games he's playing. Push start to begin. Super beanie-man gaming. Super beanie-man.
When you reach the player input sections of the game where you have to interact with something or select a dialogue choice option, these transitions into and out of these moments, with your selection triggering, are pretty much seamless, to be fair. It's a very well done part of the game that flows quite naturally. You never see a glaring jump with the image frame moving or the character suddenly snapping into a different place, and the game doesn't freeze, stutter or glitch whenever you make a selection like it does in Telltale games as it tries to load the next scene. In ERCIA, it shows you how it should be done, and I think they deserve some high praise for that one, as it works really well. For me, one of the biggest problems with the game that I disliked is the game's length, as the first playthrough of ERCIA just took me slightly over 1.5 hours, which for an $8.99 asking price at the time of this review is quite frankly and quite sadly just not enough content for my money. Now I realise the true value in these sort of games lies in repeated playthroughs to see all of the possible outcomes and endings, but it's such a slow-paced story, and it's not something that I find myself immediately wanting to go and replay it and go through the whole thing again to see another ending. No, this may just be due to the fact that my ending in particular was kind of a shit one. I think if the price was a little bit cheaper, it wouldn't be as bad, but for an hour and a half of gameplay, it's just not enough. But I understand they probably filmed several hours worth of footage, and it's, you know, for all the multiple endings, so there was a lot there. It's just a shame you don't get to see that in the game when you play through it once. And there are a lot of rushed areas, which I've mentioned already, like the girls, where you could have spent a bit more time with them. That would have padded it out. I would have liked something close to a more of at least a 2-hour experience, because 1.5 hours is just really shit. While the dialogue choices that you have are on timers, I never once felt rushed to make a choice, as the time to choose lengths that the game gives out were rather generous, to be fair. Even in the more intense moments where you maybe have to make something out of a pressured situation, you've got to choose something really quick, it still doesn't feel like you've got to do it in a split second kind of thing. For me, there's nothing worse in games like these than having like 5 options on screen, but the game only gives you time to like read 3, let alone make a choice. So you just instantly don't get to do the one you'd want to do. And I think ERCIA balances the options and the time to choose and read and decide really well, because I never missed one because I took too long. I always had enough time to look at them all and then think, yeah, that's the one I want to do. The lighter, my God, this thing was a pain in the ass to open. The touch controls on the DualShock 4 pad are just so finicky, as the controller's touchpad area is just far too small, especially for these long swipe actions the game wants you to do. Every time the lighter was on screen and I needed to use it, there would be a good 10 seconds or so of me fumbling around, swiping multiple times, only to see the lid half open and slam shut again. Erica then looks like she's a right idiot, as she can't even do the simplest of tasks. I found this a bit of a nitpick and quite funny at first, but the fact that I used the lighter multiple times caused this to be a big annoyance, as it was just a simple swipe, which I'd fail at due to the back fucking controls on the DualShock. Perhaps this would work better on a smartphone, as the touch area is bigger, but playing it on a DualShock pad is just kind of awkward. It just never worked as well as it should have, especially when it's just a simple swipe. Come on, fucking hell. Just open, man. Fuck me.
Oh shit, jinxed it. Come on. This is the hardest part of the game. I just can't do it. Look at it. Oh, there we go. Whee!
Your mother told me this place was her whole life.
The actress who plays Erica is pretty good, to be fair, and she's one of the stronger things about the game. Despite the fact that she doesn't really say a great deal, she has this confused, scared, yet kind of intrigued look about her a lot of the time, and she really did remind me of Mia Jovovich's character Lilu from The Fifth Element. She's this young, sexy girl without actually taking her clothes off, and she also has this sort of young, vulnerable sort of presence about her through her expressions and her character, which makes her a good player avatar, as you kind of really want to try and keep this person safe, even though on my playthrough I actually failed, so sorry about that, Erica. Another thing I disliked was the main cop, and well, the police in the world of Erica in general, as they're just completely incompetent. So this main guy, he ended up getting shot in the head in my playthrough, but the character, or rather the actor, was just not believable in the slightest as a detective, and his lines were all delivered in pretty much a wooden manner. He just didn't have a clue. And I think he was definitely the weakest of all actors, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually a developer or something who just wanted to be in their own game. He constantly leaves Erica alone, even though there is a murderer out to get her, and he doesn't really seem to have a clue with what's going on, or what to actually do. Why the force has got him leading an investigation, I don't know. The biggest joke of all, though, is the scene when Erica has to go back to her apartment, only to find that the door's been smashed open. Now, any good officer would tell her to wait at the door, and he'd go in with his gun and clear each room. However, this fool actually lets Erica lead the way in, and she goes in first while he hides behind her. Then, without checking every room to make sure it's clear, he just leaves her alone in the apartment and goes to knock on the next door neighbour's house, which, at this point, the killer rings her, so she was obviously watching them. He's just incompetent, and the bad acting makes this character even less believable.
Damn, what was that?
The 3 girl patients that Erica meets in Delphi House were pretty interesting characters, to be honest. I just wish the story stayed in Delphi House for a few days, allowing you to interact with all 3 girls a bit more, as this section just felt a bit rushed. Yet, there was definite promise here, as all 3 of these actresses were really good. They are perhaps the most believable of the characters in the game, and probably the best actors, to be fair, so it's a shame that, at least in my playthrough, you only get a small glimpse of these characters. From what I saw of the 3 girls, you have Kirsty, who is a sort of cleaning obsessive girl wanting to help the Delphi staff clean the building. She seems to be a very naive person who gets scared and upset quite easily, and she's probably the most vulnerable one of the bunch. Then you have Toby, the cooler, edgier, and more streetwise of the girls. Toby has her defences up for most of the time, though she did show a softer side at one point. Just don't ask her for a cigarette. Then finally we have Hannah, who is perhaps the most welcoming of the bunch, who looks after Erica when she arrives at Delphi House. She seems pretty sweet, whenever she isn't coughing up blood everywhere, that is. The game at one point asks you to choose one girl to help out, and through that you get a side mission of sorts where you bond with that character. Unfortunately though, it does lock out the other two girls, so you never actually get to do that with them. So by the time you would see the other characters later on in the story, when they can potentially die, the impact of their deaths is kind of weakened, as you barely interacted with them, got to know them, or even saw them that much by that point. It's a bit of a shame, to be fair. Lucian Flowers. Now, if that's not a blatant villain name, I don't know what is. I never trusted this guy. I knew he was bad from the beginning. It's such a dumb name though. What were they thinking? There is a cool scene early on which I thought worked really well in terms of the shots and the gameplay, and it's the bathroom scene in which Erica goes to turn on a tap and wipes the steam off the mirror as the hot water steams it up. She then proceeds to talk to herself in the mirror, trying to reassure herself. The visuals here look really nice, with the tap turn looking really well, and then the steam effect that comes up on screen, and then you actually have to rub the touchpad to clear the steam off so you can see Erica's face. I then liked how the choices just naturally came up in the background, and the way Erica's put on this big black screen behind her, it just stands out really well, and I thought this was a nice section. For the most part, the set design in ERCIA is decent, but there are a couple where it is a bit dodgy, and for me, the biggest offender came in the form of Lucian Flowers' office in Delphi House. The room was really square-shaped, and it seemed really large. The back walls didn't look quite right, and those large windows with no blinds, yet his desk is right in front of them, just seemed really odd. The way the plants and other objects were put in the back of the room to try and fill up the space just made it seem more set-like. It just didn't look right at all. The cultist area later on in the game with the well also looked dodgy as hell, as the cave just didn't look right at all.
Just tried to fill it up with stuff.
Another simple scene which I thought worked really well was when Erica was on her bed drawing in a little book. The close-up shots of the pencil and how you had to swipe the touchpad to draw the lines worked really well. I'm not sure how they did it, but it's again seamless, and you actually feel like you are physically drawing on the book, especially when you have to swipe back and forth to scribble in a section of the drawing later on. You can even move the touchpad slightly and the pencil will move, then if you let go it sort of snaps back, and this movement just works really well. It's a really nice, simple, yet massively effective scene.
That's cool.
And I really liked it. While the game does have a bigger budget and looks better than most of the games like this, there are a few ropey scenes in the game where the visual effects just don't look quite right. They're not game breaking by any means, but when the overall package looks great, these smaller, rougher areas end up looking more obvious, such as the dad chest scene, and then this close-up shot of the woman in the mask that clearly is on a green screen. What the fuck? Compared to similar titles like The Bunker and even The Late Shift on PS4, you can see that ERCIA seems to have had a much bigger budget. The camera quality, filming, direction is all great, and the way it moves from recorded shots with the actors to close-ups of an item and then showing you interacting with that item are really great. I'm not sure how they did it, but for the most part they look really impressive.
Where have you been, mate?
I'll say it again and again, but it all just seems really seamless. There's none of this like skipping or juddering every time you move around from scene to scene like you see in other games. It's just really smooth, and the way the text comes up on the screen as well, it sort of almost blends into the scene, and it doesn't look like a video game at that point when it comes up with this text telling you what to do. There's also no real button icons either, which I think helps. The touchscreen inputs are just this white light of guiding you into the direction you need to swipe. The game's reveal of the cult at Delphi House, to me, felt a bit lazy, and it was a very cliched option for them to take. I would have preferred something a bit more original. Now, don't get me wrong, the story was still interesting, but the scenes at the well with the cult only ever caused me to roll my eyes in disappointment.
Oh, there's that symbol.
I just feel like it was a missed opportunity to do something more thrillery, sort of.
It all makes sense now.
Thrillery and just more interesting, you know, psychological maybe, instead of just reeling back to a cliched, oh, it's a cult behind it.
It's on the door.
Erica's story starts off quite slowly, and it's fairly mundane with very little horror elements at the start. Apart from that dream sequence where you see a dad murdered, that's really about it for gore. Which is why when we see a pretty normal, boring shot of Erica opening a parcel left on her doorstep, only to reveal a bloody severed hand, works so well, as it's just not expected at all, and it did make me jump and shout, what the fuck. Plus, I've got to say, the effects for the severed hand look really good.
Whoa.
While the game wants you to sympathise with Erica, I must say I found the flashback scenes with her and her dad when he dies anything but. Now, sure, it's sad when he dies for a kid to experience that, but I think it was for the best, to be honest, as in most scenes he just came across creepy as hell, especially with that whole "your magic" line and the cards thing. Plus, there was that other scene in the bedroom when Erica gets that creepy old doll and they're both spinning around. I don't know, but for me it just didn't seem right, and I got the feeling that the game wanted you to care about him dying, but I just didn't. It was just fucking weird.
I think you're magic too. But you're gonna have to prove it.
Now, is this the room?
One of the reoccurring images in the game is the flashback to young Erica on the night of her father being murdered, as it's where you come face to face with the murderer who points a gun at you. The person's face is always cast in shadow, so you can never see who it is, but every time you get this flashback play out, they each play out slightly differently, so you see a bit more. These were pretty cool, to be honest, and they were quite intense with the gun being pointed right at you. Now this one's rather nitpicky, but I just thought it was one of those weird logical errors in shows that I wanted to point out. So at one point Erica has a nightmare, and then after the nightmare reaches a climax, she wakes up in bed, and you get this nice little shot of her. The issue is that she was waking up looking absolutely perfect, with her hair all tidy, and a full face of makeup with none of it out of place. Now I'm not complaining, she looks great, but it is a bit dumb that she just wakes up looking great like that.
It's like really nice, jeez. Belfast.
Some of the best parts of the game's story are when Erica receives a phone call from the mysterious murderer. These are some of the only points in the game where you feel the tension, as you don't know who this person is and where they are. You feel like whenever they are ringing you, they are nearby watching you, and that creates a feeling of dread, as Erica is then vulnerable, and you as the player want to get her out of there and protect her. They add a lot to the mystery of the game, as she sort of questions you, and everything she says and every answer she gives you just raises more questions of what's going on and whether she's the goodie or the baddie. You're never really sure, and these are really effective.
Shit.
While I was on the subject of the villain, the actress who plays her, in my opinion, isn't that great, as her performance is a bit flat at times. She's a bit wooden, and this monotone way of delivering her lines is just a bit weird. Now, this may be intentional, as she is supposedly a sort of brainwashed, sort of unstable sort of character that may talk like this. And I will give her credit that she does have good presence in the game, though, and she's always unsettling, really, whenever she's in a scene, whether it's on the phone calls or in person. And you're never quite sure if she's a good or bad guy, well, girl, as the story sort of takes you on a journey of discovery with this character, as you're never quite sure of her true intentions, and you're not quite sure either if she's actually the real bad guy, the real threat of the story. So in that respect, as a villain or as a character in general, she works. Erica's mom's Joker smile is hilarious. I mean, just look at it. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but maybe this was the most creepy thing in the game for me. She looks like she's inhaled a load of Joker's laughing gas. My god, that's terrifying. Around the midpoint of the game, another piece of a body is given to Erica by the murderer, and this is a part of someone's arm. The police take this as evidence, and you see a great shot of the body part in a bag on the police desk, and the sight of it is truly awesome, as the part has been put in a large brown bag that looks like one of those delivery bags from McDonald's. It's hilarious to see, and I really hope that's not what they use in real life. It can't be, right? Plus, the brown paper bag's just not practical at all, as it'd be all soggy now with all the blood leaking through it. Plus, the giant evidence text on it just looks really dumb, but it's probably just there to cover up the McDonald's logo. Fuck me.
Oh, no, he is? Oh, that's nice. I love these evidence bags, though. That's brilliant.
Another of the game's jump scares that got me was when Erica was looking in another bathroom mirror and you see this flashing back image, and then all of a sudden you see this blood-stained Erica standing there. This one got me, to be fair, and I did actually jump a little. The direction in this game is really well done, with all the camera shots looking really cool, but there's one that I think is really great, and it's the 360 degrees camera shot in the game as hotel lobby section. There aren't many of these, but they're used to great effect whenever they do come up. It reminds me a bit of certain shots in games like Broken Sword, and I really liked how when you move the cursor to the right or left edges of the screen, that Erica, who is standing in the middle, will turn her head in that direction. It's a small detail, but it really adds to the scene.
Let's get the phone.
At one point in the game, Erica, and you as the player, attempts to rescue Toby, who's been held captive in Delphi House, and you were told that a certain drug will save her by the doctor that was holding her prisoner. As that doctor escapes, you then have to administer it yourself, but when you do this, it turns out that the doctor was actually lying to you, and if you chose that particular drug that she was on about, Toby would just end up overdosing and dying. Now, when this happened to me in my playthrough, I was really pissed off, as I did actually want to save her, and it was just a bit of a shitty thing to happen, really. But it did create an emotion from me, at least, but just not a particularly good one. And it doesn't really make sense that they would want to kill her. I mean, I know they were trying to escape, and I guess they were trying to cover the tracks, but to just kill her outright, I just think that was a bit shitty, really. Yeah, I was disappointed at this. Now, unfortunately, despite Erica's short 1 hour 30-minute runtime, the game does end up repeating a lot of the gameplay, interactions and ideas throughout the story, which only serves to highlight how little you actually do and how repetitive and frustrating some of the gameplay moments are. The lighter is perhaps the worst offender, as its gameplay mechanic is repeated about 3 to 4 times, yet, as mentioned earlier, opening it is a right pain in the arse, so they were always annoying. The same thing happens with the rubbing off steam of the bathroom mirror in the beginning of the game, as this mechanic, though it's changed slightly to be dirt or whatever, is repeated multiple times. It's still noticeable that these few interactions that you have to do are either opening a lighter, cleaning something, opening desks or doors, or a variation on these base types. The lack of variety in what you actually get to do is disappointing, and it would have been good if perhaps you had some actual puzzles in the game, taking inspiration from the hidden object games and those puzzles that they have in there. Not necessarily the hidden object scenes themselves, but the key puzzles, like maybe like a Resident Evil thing. It was just a shame it just repeats too much.
It's not in our power to love.
Now, my ending of Erica in my first playthrough, it was a pretty bad one, to be fair. I wanted Erica to be this nice girl, that's how I sort of saw her, so I didn't really kill anyone unless it was an accident with Toby. So the ending with Lucien, I didn't want to shoot him because I didn't think that was what Erica was. She wasn't a murderer, she was just an innocent girl caught up in a terrible situation. So I didn't shoot. And as a result, I got a really shit ending. It ended on a real downer, which was rather frustrating, as I wanted Erica to get out. I wanted to get to escape and have a good ending. I could have by shooting Lucien Flowers, but for me, that wasn't who Erica was. So unfortunately, I got a bad ending, and it was kind of disappointing, really.
Prisoner, haunted by old ghosts. Erica remains.
Overall, Erica is an interesting game to watch, but not necessarily to play. I think if you go into this for the story and not necessarily the gameplay, you may enjoy it. The quality is definitely there, as this is clearly a title with a much bigger budget, and the actors for the most part all do a great job. However, like all the other FMV games, it can't escape the pitfalls of those titles, as it's far too short, especially for an $8.99 asking price to fully recommend. And you do watch far more than you actually ever play or interact with. I'd say for me, Until Dawn is still the better game, as especially a narrative game, as it has a much greater balance between story and gameplay, and it's also more interesting for me. So I would recommend that game over this if you wanted a better mix of gameplay and story. However, if you're specifically after an live action FMV narrative driven story game, then I would definitely say that ERCIA is the best one you can get on PS4. It's definitely better than The Bunker, which was really nice idea but just amateurish in the acting, and it's also probably on par, slightly better than Late Shift, which was a more sort of Cockney gangster one. So yeah, on the whole, ERCIA's a nice experience. You don't really do much in terms of gameplay, but it is expensive, and for the shortness of the game, that is an issue. But if you can find it cheap in a sale one time, then definitely pick it up and give it a go. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Super Beanie Man, and I will see you next time for another review. See ya.